Have you ever been completely obsessed with something? I mean, wake up, think about it, eat breakfast, think about it, do that thing all day until you go to bed too late, and even then, you just lay there thinking about it. I'm sure many of you can relate, but what about when what you obsess about is how you are the only non-trans person left on the planet? Yeah, you heard me right. What about if you really believe that the aliens, the reptiles, or the Hollywood elite have replaced all the people on the planet with trans people? What do you do then? Well, obviously you join Facebook and you become a transvestigator. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The absolute pits of despair that is this insane conspiracy theory. I went real deep down that rabbit hole to try and answer a few very important questions such as why, how, and what the fuck is wrong with these people. So first up, what is a transvestigator? Transvestigators are people who participate in the act of transvestigation. Okay, let me qualify that one. There exist groups of people online who sincerely believe that almost every person alive is actually trans, meaning that if you look at someone and they look female, they were born a man, and if they look male, they were born a woman. These people mostly focus on celebrities in the mainstream transvestigator Facebook groups, but obviously the further down that pit you dig, you will unearth people who take creep shots of strangers, draw a straight line on their back, and pretend that line shows that the person they're talking about is trans. Just clearly very, very mentally unwell behaviour that 30 years ago would see that person thrown inside a room and just ostracised from society in general for their own safety. But in 2023, they are allowed to just exist for whatever reason while having their delusions on full display for all to see. So the method by which these people, these transvestigators, perform their transvestigations is basically like a 5-dimensional math equation. They will draw on a picture with a bunch of angles, circles, squares, triangles to point out how that person is trans. They think that women and men have these very simple biological markers that are set in stone and don't differ at all between the billions of people inhabiting the Earth, and if you have a single one of these markers, you are in fact born a different gender from the one which you represent. It can be as simple as having a collarbone that isn't straight horizontal, it can be as simple as having not a big ass or too big of an ass, and of course my favourite, your eyes might have a certain kind of energy. Hey girl, you're giving me male energy in those eyes type thing. So that's what they do. Why do they do it? Well, we'll get into that deeper a little later on when we have gone through the journey together, but obviously right off the bat we can chalk this whole thing up to severe, untreated mental illness. These people are obviously going through some shit, so now how about we go through their shit together and at least it'll help you forget about your own problems for the duration of this video. You can then say, wow, no matter what I'm going through, at least I'm not these people. Let's look at a few very popular examples of the burden of proof when it comes to transvestigation. Farrah Fawcett. Some of you older viewers might remember this lady. Well, what if I were to tell you that Farrah Fawcett was in fact born a man? Examine, if you will, Exhibit A. She has a straight clavicle, also known as a collarbone. Now, far be it from me to argue with such a scientific approach, so if a straight collarbone means you were born a man, let's look at what the transvestigators argue is a female collarbone. So here's Ryan Gosling. You guys remember Ryan Gosling, right? The guy who doesn't speak a whole bunch in his movies, but he's in some great ones. Well, this is his collarbone, a V-shape, undeniable evidence. Now obviously this is some really compelling stuff, but it doesn't end here. Let's move on and toss a coin to everyone's one and only favourite Witcher, Henry Cavill. Previously considered a manly man, I mean look at the absolute specimen. Well, according to the Facebook group admin for the Transvestigation Disclosure Now 2 group, who are of course the foremost experts on the subject, Henry has, quote, girly eye. Basically, he's got feminine energy coming out of his eyes. Case closed. Who could argue with such evidence? How could anyone remain thoroughly unconvinced by such evidence? Here's one from my boy Jordan, who found himself posting some of the women who would likely rank highly on most attractive actresses on the planet, claiming all of them were in fact born men. Now, I'm not sure what Jordan is trying to tell us here, but I'm going to hazard a guess that he is very confused about his sexuality, and also that he's never been within 10 feet of an adult woman in the real world. Now, you might say these are low-hanging fruit examples, and surely there's more substance to the equations that they're drawing out. But let me tell you that there is no more fruit hanging at any greater heights. There is only fruit touching the ground here. If you look through the multiple Facebook groups and YouTube channels, you'll see the same nonsense. It's basically just, I drew a triangle on this man wearing a suit, and that means that man was born a woman and is in fact trans. So the more important question is, where do these people come from and what the fuck is going on? Well, all of this utter nonsense has been dragged up from the depths of a Facebook group, which unfortunately is where you're going to find most of the worst things on the planet. This particular Facebook group I found also has some of the most hilarious rules you'll ever see for such a stupid group of people participating in such a pathetically obsessive and crazy thing, such as rule number 3, do not transvestigate anyone who isn't famous. Props to them though, because they do discourage the use of slurs towards trans people, which I'm going to guess is to try and prevent their Facebook group from being deleted for hate speech, again, since they're clearly on their second version. But this particular rule does end with the absolute corker of no anti-vegan bullshit. So they have their priorities straight. This is a wholesome transvestigator Facebook group, and we don't tolerate anti-vegan propaganda around these parts. Rule 2 though, this is where everything really starts to explain itself and where we can see the true face of utter insanity in the people who are literally obsessed with trans people to the point where they see them everywhere. No transvestigation undermining. Quote, in order to get to the top in Hollywood, music, sports, politics or business, one must invert themselves, with the exception of porn star males that must have a penis. Satan never uses real females. This, remember, is not only the accepted premise, but it's a rule that they all must follow and not undermine or risk being removed from the echo chamber of the insane. This means they accept every politician, musician, actor, athlete, business person. They are all forced to become trans, every single one of them. So your parents might own a small mom and pop shop. They might, own a business. Did you know that they are actually trans? I bet you didn't, because obviously most people didn't. So at this point, it moves beyond just a silly thing that some boomers are doing on Facebook that we can laugh at because haha, that's funny. And you need to start asking a few more questions, such as where does all of this go and why do they think that everyone's trans? For what purpose? What is the underlying premise? So that's where I set out on my journey of self-discovery in order to answer those questions, or at least try. I Clockwork Oranged my eyes open and subjected myself to multiple hour-long documentaries made by these utter fucking lunatics. And you know what I discovered? Well, it's easier to follow a Kanye West interview from 2022 than it is to follow anything these people are saying.
I am Jew also, the 12 lost tribes of Hebrew. Do the math.
Basically, once you move beyond the exterior of everyone's trans and we don't know why, you see that this conspiracy group delves deep into the same pits as every other fringe conspiracy group that you're going to run into on the internet. If you're a connoisseur of these types of groups like me, you could print out a bingo card right now and write down the conspiracy words you most often expect, and you would get them all right. Aliens, reptiles, Nazis, MK Ultra, Jewish people, Joe Biden, Pizzagate, Donald Trump, John F. Kennedy Jr., Satanism. I could continue, but you get the idea. They're all there. Basically, once you go down the transvestigation rabbit hole, you find that the underground tunnel network branches off in hundreds of directions, but they all lead to the same exact place. And that place is mental illness. And that doesn't answer the questions that I needed answered. After hours of this, I truly needed to know why they thought the elites that control us are making every famous person trans. So for that, I needed to find the figureheads of the movement and examine their social feeds, because maybe the leaders would be posting about the master plan and why they were fighting so hard to bring what they believe to be a legitimate takeover of society to the forefront of the social consciousness. And that's what led me to this lady.
Female impersonators have been deceiving you the whole time. Jessica is a male, and so is Megan Fox. All of these sexy fantasy girls you've been lusting after, they've all been dudes.
She's the leader of the biggest transvestigator group on Facebook. You know, the one with the rules about vegans. Now, she likes to refer to herself as Queen Ayanna. She also likes to post videos of herself proving that she's a woman, and I can't show the whole thing because she literally gets naked at some points to prove she has a feminine body, but the fact she examined her own body and posts things like this in order to convince a Facebook group she created full of psychos that she isn't what they call an invert psyop sent to trick them into ruining their lives believing something silly like everybody's trans, well, that explained that I was in the right place for answers. I mean, if this person wasn't posting about the real shit, what hope could I have of finding out exactly why they think this is happening? Unfortunately, again, after subjecting myself to reading the Queen's posts and watching her completely unhinged and disjointed videos that constantly trail off into tirades about the Bible, Satan, and Hollywood, I still couldn't get any answers beyond the obvious one that they're doing it because of Satan. And a bunch of stuff about black goo, like it was some episode of the Power Rangers or something. But I didn't want to stop there, because to me, this seemed like a boring conclusion. I was thinking maybe this conspiracy had a super interesting narrative that would be funny to uncover, and also a rabbit hole we could substantiate further. I mean, there had to be some reason they were so obsessed about this crazy concept they've conjured up that seems to just exist to scare themselves into a frenzy and make a problem out of nothing. What I did find as an aside is that there's infighting in the Transvestigator community, a civil war the likes of which the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be in envy of. The Facebook group rules started to really make sense, and Rule 3 came back up into my brain. Why did the Queen not want people to investigate non-famous people? Well, it's because new Facebook groups were appearing claiming that the lead transvestigator herself, the Queen herself, is actually an invert, which is again the fucked up word they use for trans people in order to circumvent their group being flagged for hate speech and deleted again. These new groups were claiming that she had a quote male skull and calling Ayanna a he. The evidence presented was of course astonishing. I mean, the user even compared Ayanna's pictures with a very scientific process they call female biomarkers. The final nail in the coffin though was where they said quote, and take a look at this gaze. That's a female staring at you with that energy in the eyes? Nah, there's a reason he went through every biomarker in his investigation video on YouTube but didn't include the energy within the eyes, the windows to the soul. Ah, how the turntables. Imagine that. You create an unhinged conspiracy theory where you take a narrow rule set you created of what features a man or a woman are allowed to have, drew some triangles, circles, squares and lines on images of people, and said this is definitive proof that they are trans. And then people took those same metrics and used them against you, someone who for whatever reason has made yourself the figurehead of the movement. Who would have thought it possible? But still, at this point I was just getting distracted by the infighting and I was no closer to the answers I was seeking. But no matter where I went, or how many 3-hour-long rambling documentaries about elites, Baphomet, Satan, aliens and Jewish people that I watched, I couldn't even get a remote answer as to what would be gained by making everyone trans. So I tried to find someone who was doing real research. And if you could see me right now while I'm reading this script, yes, I did use air quotes when I said research.
This trans agenda is far more than sex. So please hang around and wade through the transgender portion to get to the other stuff. I'm going to talk about MK Ultra, and I'm going to talk about the Montauk Project, and I'm going to talk about the alien agenda.
So, you know what I found in the end? It's that, well, that the people who are engaging in these activities are warriors of God. They believe they've been chosen by a higher power to bring truth to the world, because of course they do. These people, they do not call themselves transvestigators usually, but instead refer to themselves as truthers, which is fucking hilarious given the context of what they believe and how they spend their time. So after all of that, the only conclusion I could really come to is that the only reason these people think everyone's trans is because they don't like the idea of trans people, and therefore it's the latest thing that they believe the elites are using to control us. I know that's an anticlimactic answer and you might feel a little bit robbed by watching this video, but it's all I could figure out because the other things were pieces of yarn you'd pull and it'd just unravel a whole load of other conspiracy theories. Realistically, what's going on is it's just a bunch of people who have really shit lives who have decided to seek out the grandest conspiracies in order to distract them from the reality that they've wasted a lot of their time on this planet and things aren't as cool as they envisioned that they would be. Basically, time's running out, life's really boring, and these conspiracies are entertaining and grander than they are, so why not believe in those instead? They've got to believe in something huge that they could never impact to make themselves the hero of the story, fighting back against this overwhelming and all-consuming evil, to give themselves purpose beyond, I just go to work every day, I pay my bills, and then eventually everything's going to come to an end and nobody's going to really care. People make this decision subconsciously all the time, and for whatever reason, these particular people have convinced themselves that whatever sexual organ is in a stranger's pants, or what a stranger represents themselves as, is the thing that should consume every waking moment of their life. And that's the real answer. But the other answers, that unfortunately I couldn't really follow all too closely, that kept coming back, were just rabbit holes we'll have to further explore later, such as the entire population of the planet is being replaced by trans people by aliens, reptile people, or ancient cults who worship mythological beasts. There is also one really interesting meta storyline that kept getting thrown around in the documentaries they were making, talking about Nazis that do something called channeling from other dimensions, where they have super technology and cloning facilities, and that's really compelling. Maybe we could follow that one. But I couldn't tell if they were saying that these were the good guys of the story or the bad guys, because mostly they just bring it up as a thing, as if it was accepted fact, and not about where they're positioned within the story. Honestly, it's difficult. I kind of got lost in the narrative a bit. Listening to these documentaries is not like anything I've really experienced before. It's all just disjointed ideas and thoughts, slammed into you with quotes from the Bible and random philosophical questions and Shakespeare quotes. Yeah, just don't ask me to explain. It's not something I physically can at this stage. But I'm going to leave you with something, because while writing this script, the universe must have known and decided to put this guy on my Twitter feed so we could get a laugh right at the end of the video. This guy saw a picture of Taylor Swift in a bikini and said, "Damn, Taylor Swift has a penis." And then of course got community noted by people that aren't virgins, who very hilariously had to point out to him what a pubic bone is. Basically, he got community noted saying, "You've never seen a woman naked before, have you?" To which he continued to make posts claiming clearly this is a penis and hashtagging "We want answers," and then going on to post other celebrities claiming they are also trans because they have checks notes necks. So there you go. You are trans if you have a neck. I then of course checked his profile, and yeah, 132,000 followers on Twitter just spewing nonsense about the Illuminati and all other forms of brain rot. So I guess overall, this saga has opened my eyes to a bunch of other conspiracy theories that I really want to deep dive. I'm going to dedicate some time over the next few months to go down these rabbit holes. But hopefully, we've all got to cross our fingers that they're not going to send the aliens or the reptiles or the trans-dimensional Nazis to stop me, because Transvestigators was just the gateway drug into a whole other universe of severely deranged nonsense that's right up my alley of interest. So there you have it. They are out there. They walk among us. You never know who might be taking pictures of you and asserting that you are actually trans just because you have a collarbone that looks different how they think it should. And maybe you've actually been replaced by the interdimensional reptile army. Just a thought.